So the format is that we talk a little bit about what it is. So we start with the satsang overview. Then randomly I chose let's talk about silence, significance of silence. And Maharishi Raman has talked eloquently about it. So we'll go there for a few minutes. And then I come back, talk about how we will meditate. So this all is packaged as my grandfather himself reached higher states through his guru's guidance and direction. Um, and then after the session, usually I open it up for interaction. So online or down here. Some people will have to leave around 10:45. So the plan is that if not, we wrap up the meditation, it will be almost there, right? So satsang overview, then talk about silence, because there is the real core meditation is done in silence. But there is like preamble and postamble. And preamble, before we get even into music, which helps concentration, I talk about how to meditate, right? So that will be the sequence, and then we'll wrap up, and we can stay here or wrap up early. That typically it anyway wraps up between 11:15. So we'll see how the interaction goes. So Shivangi, let's talk about the overview, and then Yuan, let's play the video that I recorded on significance of silence.
Happy Saturday and welcome to Ramashram Satsang Weekend Workshop, where you will learn a modern satsang method for obtaining peace, light, and love in your life. My name is Shivangi and I will be introducing the facilitator for today's event. But first, I'd like to give you a brief overview to this satsang session. If you'll direct your attention to the screen, you'll see that the first element is satsang. Satsang is a scientific method whereby we may obtain peace, light, and love in our lives. It requires no physical skill, spiritual accomplishment, or meditation experience to begin this practice. Satsang consists of two words, sat and sang. Sat means positive energy, and sang means to be with or to be in the presence of. Therefore, the word satsang means to be in the presence of positive energy. The next element is meditation. Meditation is an important part of satsang. When we meditate, our consciousness is drawn from worldly objects and directed inward to focus on a single thought. In doing so, our minds become calm and our thoughts become pure, leading us to higher states of consciousness such as enlightenment, peace, light, and love. Inner orientation. There are two types of satsangs: inner satsang and outer satsang. An example of outer satsang would be chanting or attending pilgrimages. When we practice outer satsang, we have the potential to change our behavior, but only through the practice of inner satsang can we obtain higher states of consciousness such as enlightenment, peace, light, and love. This is the type of satsang we will learn today, where we meditate in silence. Group sessions. These weekend workshops are structured for group participation. When we meditate as a group, our focus is improved and our personal progress along our spiritual path is expedited. By regularly attending these weekend workshops, the benefits of group participation are amplified. Joy and inner happiness. All beings wish to experience joy. Joy is the eternal longing of the soul, but only through the practice of inner satsang can we obtain a joyous state. Each time we practice satsang, our inner happiness gradually increases, ultimately culminating in a state of joy that we experience 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The agenda for today's session consists of three parts: the informative session, the practice session, and the interactive session. During the informative session, a lecture will be given about a satsang topic, the founder, or some relevant spiritual topic. During the practice session, instructions on how to meditate will be given, followed by a period of practice. During the interactive session, you will have the opportunity to ask questions or there will be a panel discussion. And now, I'd like to introduce the facilitator for today's event. He has over 40 years of satsang experience. He is the grandson of Guru Maharaj, the founder of Ramashram Satsang. He was born into a satsang family where he witnessed his family members obtaining states of enlightenment and lived lives of peace, light, and love. At an early age, he began traveling with the mission throughout India, facilitating satsangs. During that time, he witnessed the positive effects that satsang could have on mankind. Upon arriving in the United States, both he and his wife continued to facilitate satsangs for local satsangis. He has led teams of satsang members in translating important satsang literature into English and has worked tirelessly to make satsang more accessible to Western and English speaking audiences. He currently travels throughout United States, India, and England facilitating satsangs while maintaining his duties as a husband, a father, and an IT executive. Today, he will teach us a rare and ancient form of satsang as taught by our Guru Maharaj. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Sanjeev Kumarji.
Let's talk about silence. I think today's culture, we not only underestimate the value of silence, it's not only just teenagers, anybody and everybody feels uncomfortable when they're silent. And I think it's a disservice to yourself. So let me pause here. This section or this video I'm dedicating to my grandmother, Guru Maharaj's wife, Jiyama, because every time I think about silence and think about how someone can preach or pass on knowledge or make you feel peaceful in silence without a spoken word, so much can be transferred. It could be a mental state. It could be a state of knowledge. It could be a state of higher consciousness itself. Maharishi Raman, who was a big sage in southern India, who eloquently talked about silence. And he said, speech is actually distracting the real communication. What he meant was that in silence, we are communicating very deeply and effectively. And our vocal language actually disturbs that process. And he goes on and on about the significance and how potent silence is. He says, deep meditation is eternal speech. And think about that, how deep that is. Actually, those who have practiced some meditation, when in deep meditation, they acquire this higher awareness. What is it? It is when you become aware of so many things that you were not aware of. Meditation is a process through which you are able to hear your inner voice. And that, I think he's referring to as eternal speech. So your inner conscience you're able to bring your inner conscience to a state where that like literally is talking to you in meditation. So it's in a sense, your ability to stop the mental activity is meditation, and that is real silence, he says. So real silence is when you are in deep meditation where mental activity has stopped. And he also says that it is extremely potent. He gives an example of Dakshinamurti when 4 sages came to him with several queries and no words were spoken, and they went completely satisfied with all their questions being answered with no spoken word used. So he talks about silence is through which knowledge actually appears to you. So Maharishi Raman talks about the significance and the strength of communication through silence. And he says, think about a speech. Sometimes you listen to a speech and then it says it touched your heart. So he says the communication that touches your heart. Think about heart-to-heart speech. In silence, how much stronger that would be. So he says the strongest form of communication is silence. And strongest form of activity is peace. Pretty deep. And he says when you are in silence, you are connected in nature in a whole different way. That you are resonating with nature in the sense that you can, in those circumstances, bring certain powers to play that you would not be otherwise. So he says silence is very, very potent. Then he says that, in form of communication, so if you are, say, you're praying, prayer in silence, which a lot of people do not understand what it is, forget about doing it. But Maharishi Raman said, prayer in silence is the highest form of prayer. And communication in terms of guru teaching the shishya or the disciple, he says the silent discourse is the highest form of a discourse. He says there are initiation ceremonies for guru and disciple where through touch, through eye contact, through other means, guru initiates the disciple. But he says all those are secondary to the highest form of initiation, which is through silence. And he says, think about speech. Something started in the subconscious, then became a thought. Then potentially after that came out the word. So he says the word is the grandson of silence, And hence, if you step back, the real thing, the inheritance that came was through silence. And that is why it is so much important that we figure out how we can utilize those root forces or the sources of that energy to our advantage through silence. And essentially, to sum it up, what we need to think about is silence need not be uncomfortable, need not be something that we completely avoid. When I see in satsangs, when thousands of people sit in silence, you can feel that energy. That collective energy is enormous. I would definitely ask you to experience it yourself. Do not avoid connecting to yourself through silence. Listen to yourself through silence. See more and become aware. A higher level of awareness would come through silence. So let's reinvigorate this very potent tool. As Maharishi Raman eloquently talks about, the most eloquent form of communication is silence. So let's make use of that. Let's communicate and imbibe energy and knowledge and hear to the real self through silence. Thank you.
So let's practice that. I'm starting a 5-week online course on what is satsang and practice aspects and the lineage aspects and all that. So I start with this because at the core, that's what we do in this practice. So let's so just 30 seconds. So Ashtanga Yoga, which Maharishi Patanjali talked about, has 8 limbs. So all 8 limbs need to be strong for your body to be strong. And 4 of those 8 limbs are actually meditative practices. So asanas and pranayams are core to your physical well-being. Yama and niyama are part of, your behavior, what behaviors you should have, what behaviors you should not have. But what my grandfather said was, if you focus more on the 4 meditative practices, you will be able to, with that focus and concentration, you would be able to implement behavioral changes as well as focus on how you actually focus on your well-being overall. So his view was that start with this and inner orientation, concentration. So we'll practice pretty much literally almost in the sequence. It's not sequential, but so let's first talk about inner orientation. So how do you get that? So that's your prep. So eyes lightly closed because sensory input that's going into your eyes is distracting your mind. We want to concentrate and focus on one thing. So from multitude of thoughts, you want to come to one thing. What's that one thing? Is your dharana or object of concentration. So what do you want to focus on? You can think of whatever your faith is. You feel that presence in real terms, in conscious terms, and think of that to be the source of this transcendental energy in form of light. So I'll step back. For inner orientation, we need to look inwards. So eyes lightly closed and still and relaxed posture, because we want to focus and concentrate. So still and relaxed posture. We don't want to move our body because every time the body moves, your mind gets distracted. And stillness of posture is where asanas and pranayams lead you to. So Siddhasana is where my grandmother would sit still in one posture for 2 hours. And so you can do it. So still and relaxed posture, eyes lightly closed. And now you feel this presence. So feel a conscious presence as a source of this transcendental energy in form of light. And this light is directly coming to your heart, enlightening your heart, and then distributing throughout your body. So this observance of this transcendental energy source, that could be of your choice, and that a conscious source, and this light is coming directly to your heart. Earlier, it used to be from gurus to disciple, heart to heart, light. So this light is entering your heart, enlightening your heart, distributing throughout your body, and you are becoming the light. You are getting totally immersed in this light. There is no thought, there is no activity, there is nothing else. You're just observing this conscious source of light. This light is entering your heart and it's distributing throughout your body. So essentially, you are becoming that transcendental energy in form of light. So you becoming the light. Now, one key thing which everybody talks about, as soon as you start this, mind wanders away. As soon as you figure out that mind has wandered away, bring it back to this thought and this thought alone. You do anything else to help concentration, do it before or after. While doing this, just focus on this conscious source of this transcendental energy in form of light. That light is entering your heart, enlightening your heart, then distributing throughout your body, and you are getting completely and totally immersed in this light. We'll start with music. Music helps concentration. And then we go into deep silent meditation. And then we transition out from this, through music again. Okay, so let's eyes lightly closed, still and relaxed posture. A conscious source of this transcendental energy in form of light. Light is entering your heart, distributing throughout your body, and you're becoming one, totally immersed in this. We'll start. right. So, again, happy Saturday, everyone. So I'm here with some of the folks I have known for better part of my life. Um, I'm kind of thinking, when I woke up, I was thinking I should dedicate this session to friendship and relationships, which is friendship uh, to me always was more than, biological relationships. And, the Harvard study found that one thing common with people who live longer was longer term relationships. And to me, that is friendship. So people here I know for 4 decades or more, and I have someone else who I know even longer online. And we'll probably hear about some. There was a discussion on mental resilience we did a couple of weeks ago. We can talk a little bit about that. But before we open this up for interaction, um, this can be integrated into our lives. Um, Practice is required. And I think his view was half hour morning, evening, or 1 hour you give to yourself, give to meditation, and your life, he would say, guaranteed will transform. The interesting thing is, like, everyone has their mind, our personalities, how we can focus and not, and all that differs so much. But practice can change a lot of things. So my father, who was a chemistry professor at University of Rajasthan in Jaipur, um, most of his later life was dedicated to traveling throughout northern India, just doing these sessions. So my grandfather kind of created the urban retreat where 3 days, 5 sessions, morning, evening, and morning. So 3 days, all big cities in northern India, and even now middle and southern as well. There are these retreats that happen. Here, what I've done is like westernized it a little bit. So Saturday, 2 sessions, and Sunday. So I do weekend, so I don't have to take off from work. Friday night I fly, Sunday night I'm back. This year itself, we did Seattle, Bay Area, London, Manchester, at my home in my basement like this. Work about 100 people gathered from various places, like we have gathered here. Um, Cleveland, Ohio, and Southbury, Connecticut is coming up. Maybe Richmond, Virginia too. So the thing is that collective energy helps the individual practice. And so I've opened this up like every Saturday. There's the link, you just join virtually. The thing is that, various levels of concentration and various levels of meditation. So my father used to talk about there are 3 stages. So first stage is when you know, even if it's going to the temple or doing any activity which kind of uplifts you. So the first stage is when think of like there's a bright sun and there is a small stone. It heats up in the stone. The stone heats up in the sunlight. You dip it into water, it cools down. So the first stage is that. You go, you meditate, you go to the temple, you will see there is a temporary relief. what we were like, through all the lives, various things that happen, we're like, all worked up. You go take some relief. So you dip that stone in the water, it cools down. And so that's stage one. You have no capacity. So like solar cell gets the capacity and the light comes on at night. So nighttime there is no light, but there is storage there. And hence, so we need that capacity of positive energy for our later nights, right? Dark nights. So what happens, he says, like if you practice this, the second stage that comes is your inside becomes like a cotton ball. It might be heated up in the sun, you dip it in the water, it soaks it up. So when you come back in the sun, it's still cool and it's still, stays cooler. So the stage two is this stone inside has become a cotton ball. That happens with meditation. So your capacity increases of absorbing the energy. That happens fairly quickly if you practice. But the third stage he actually described what I had heard about as surrender, giving, and various other words. So the third stage, he said, is like when your inside becomes like a salt. You put it in the water, there's no more salt. So that kind of, one day I was thinking, and it described that when you become limitless, from limited to limitless, that's the growth path. The third stage is when you kind of give into a bigger entity and become that entity. One other definition I recently came about of spirituality is like, think about bubbles on top of the ocean. So so we are all bubbles, right? Pop-ups, right? So limited time, limited capacity. So we are bubbles, we live for some time and then. So spirituality takes you, so you think you are the bubble, but when you start thinking that you are the ocean instead, then you have reached the third stage. So the spiritual journey, one example could be that I think I'm limited, I think I'm, a bubble, and I have all these problems because I don't think I'm the ocean. Once you start thinking that you are the ocean, your perspective, your concepts, your thinking all changes. So on that note, I think I'll shut up and let's open this up. Any thoughts, questions, comments? And here, so we have people here, and so yeah, so TTN, let's.
First of all, I want to thank you for the opportunity. I myself have been meditating for the past about a little over 4 years. Almost first thing in the morning, 20 minutes I do. I think I've been regular, I would say about 98% of my time except travels that
People can't listen if you
get closer.
or yeah, you can.
Come this way.
Yeah.
So I also in my 4 years I've realized little bit of benefit. At my home, I've been told that I've become a little bit calmer.
Calmer. Yeah. Yeah.
Tiny bit patient.
Yeah.
So that's what I've heard, which is I think I realized myself. that's that part. But as a batchmate, I've realized this bit of value. I'm just amazed that you're helping hundreds and thousands of people around the world to meditate. So I just put my hats off to you to do that, because I know I just realized the tip of the thing. I feel like everybody should meditate, and you're helping hundreds and thousands of people meditate. So I just want to congratulate you and also be grateful for that service that you do.
Well, I feel humbled in many ways. One thing I was thinking about when bringing all of us together was like the first thing I'll start with is, if I can do it, anybody can do it, right? It's like a lot of people know me in various different. One thing that this process taught me is that you don't have to change your name, you don't have to change your gear, you don't have to change your hairstyle, you don't even have to have a title. All you need to do is connect, right? If you are connected, then you feel different, right? And so I think somebody was telling me there was about a college, their logo had "Be the Light," right? So just be the light. It's as simple. Yeah, there was some other thought that was coming to me. But anyway, no,
I just have one question, and
Yeah,
I'll
right.
just go to somebody else. I want to reach a stage where thoughts come. I want to be the gatekeeper and push the thoughts away so that doesn't control my brain. So how do you make sure thoughts really come on my invitation rather than it's just coming on its own invitation?
Yeah. So if everybody heard the question, it was, can I control what's coming in? And I can kind of stop the barrage at will. So this kind of reminds me that the higher level we are at, we should have like utility services, right? You switch on the light, you switch off the light when you don't want. Peace, light, love within us should be on demand, right? That's the control that we ought to have. But what happens is the emotions, so those are called the lower level things, but they are actually tools that can be utilized too for many good things as well. So how do you, so there are two things. One is that in general, we need control. Control is not that give away everything you have. All these tools are useful in many ways. You just need to be you need to be in charge rather than being consumed by things. So the initial techniques for, so think of like, mind has been described as monkey mind. I have some slides on that, right? Mind has been described as a wild horse. So in that example, if you typically see how the wild horse is tamed, initially you let the horse run and run and run amok, then the energy goes down. And then you saddle the horse, right? So my father used to explain it in two ways. One is that, why fight? You don't fight with the wild horse. Why fight? Just observe. So another example that recently came up was, as soon as the teacher comes in the room, what was happening in the room changes. Teacher didn't say anything, didn't do anything. when you observe. Meditation is nothing but observing your thoughts in a way. But you have to go other stages too. But the initial thing is that you just observe. And that observation you will find is leading somewhere. So we kind of become like very impatient. No, be patient. With the wild horse, you got to be patient, right? So that's number one. Number two is that we sometimes don't realize that we have three energies. I have a video on that. There are three energies that affect your meditation. Think of three states that you will inevitably go through when you try to meditate. I mean, even at higher stages. What are those Sat, Raj, and Tam, they're called, right? So initially, when you actually start meditation in a serious way, what happens is you sit and you find, oh my goodness, this was unbelievable, right? Refreshed, energized. I was in a different world. You know, some people think they're like becoming lighter, light, sounds, and so on and so forth. So what's happening is positive energy state is driving that meditation to higher levels almost effortlessly. Great. So that's how you get hooked. But then your past sins come about, right? So basically, we have been, as somebody was saying, that for ages and ages and ages, as human beings, we have kind of used this tool in some very strange ways, and that comes about. So my father used to say that there are two other states. So this and inevitably comes, and people think those two stages are like deterioration, but he used to say no. So you will find that sometimes when you close your eyes, it's almost like a movie comes on. It almost like it's things that you have never heard, things that you have never seen, things that will pop up, and things that you have been dealing with. All those like come in a sequence, which you cannot stop. So he used to talk about like if there is a room which is very dusty, when the dust is settled, it kind of looks okay. But if you want to clean it, the dust unsettles and it looks worse before it actually gets clean. That's the second stage. So it's called Raj, where there is activity. Activity means there is no real peace. So you think that this meditation is not going anywhere, or what is happening? Why am I, but this is inevitable. He used to say that you will have to cross these stages before you go into, and they will sometimes come back because some buried treasures or otherwise will show up. So that's a cleansing process. Then there is Tam. And Shiv, is a depiction of that energy, which is very strong, but it can be very dark. It has flip and both sides. But so what happens is that you suddenly close your eyes and it's dark, and it's I don't want to meditate. This is you don't feel good even after. So that third stage is also part of your makeup. And you will go through those stages where there are days when you absolutely don't feel like meditating. There are days when you sit and don't, it's so almost like opposite to what you expect in meditation. Lethargy and darkness and so on and so forth, right? You have to go through that too. and not once, but sometimes multiple times. The thing is, these stages are not like scientific for everyone. They can be minutes to days to weeks to months, sometimes years. And that is how people give up, right? So one of the thought processes is that your focus should be, my duty is that meditation, if you look at the research and all that, helps. So I put aside this much time, whatever happens. That's called the practice, right? I mean, you don't feel good. I mean, any practice, right? Football practice, there will be days when you are in it, there are days but the coach says, show up otherwise. Right? So that's what it is. Yes, sir. So my, so we're yoga expert here.
So we can share some common thoughts.
Yeah.
We've been talking about
Yeah,
this
yeah.
past also. I have
Yeah.
some comments, observations, and some questions also, right?
I-
We all know this, meditation is very good from many angles, health and happiness point of view, right? But when it comes to actual practice, people are not able to bring that meditation into our normal life. For example, whatever you taught, intellectually, this room probably is a higher level compared to
Yeah.
common man.
You can sit down, then people can see it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Intellectually, this room is probably much higher than the common man, right? So if you look at the world, the biggest problem in the world is the stress.
Stress, yeah.
That is precipitating as health problems, diabetes. People know that meditation can
Helps.
help solve the problem.
Mhm.
But when it comes to really solution, people aren't able to apply it, right? Anyway, to some extent, we are unable to take that message across to them and then make them practice, because some people try it and then they give up very easily, right? So the world more and more, as I see, especially next generation, the kids I see, they're getting into this achievement mode all the time, disconnected mode. We come from the emotional, connected, world, dependent world. Now more and more, these kids are going into disconnected, materialistic world, right? So this is going to be a big problem in the world going forward. So meditation is definitely a good weapon to solve the problem. But I mean, you've been teaching a lot about this meditation to help the world to solve these kind of problems. But from your experience, what is not, it's still I think is for intellectual level, I think some people are getting it, but the next level, people are not able to get that message, the value of it, and of course, bringing that into practice, that's not happening. So what are some problems that you saw, and what could be some solutions that you can give?
Yeah. Great question. So strange thing is that I don't know, maybe I'm going out on a limb on this one, because what you are talking about, what happens to the next generation, each generation thinks about that, right? But every generation has their own challenges, right? Our prior generation versus us versus the next one. What I find is this. I go back to the Lord of the Rings trilogy, right? The first one had certain number of negative forces. The second one multiplied. So from thousands, it became hundreds of thousands. And then the multiplier effect, the third one had even more. If you go back in history, there was no time when these methods were completely gone, but there was always challenges of the time that kind of came across. So history is very full of, like, we kind of keep repeating same challenges and problems in different forms, different styles over time. So, in my head, sometimes I think as a human race, we have a handicap. We don't learn, right? I mean, I can literally go and 100 years ago, my grandfather or his guru wrote, we have a problem. And if you take it today, we have the same problem. How is that possible, right? The end of the day, I feel it all boils down to the mind. So what happens, you come up with, say, a new concept of capitalism or democracy or, you know, let's mindfulness or something, right? What happens is that slowly our mind start playing games and pollutes. So mind has these three energies, right? Sat, Raj, and Tam. Sat uplifts, Tam pushes it down. Raj can be affected, activity positive, activity negative, both. So it flip flops. So because of that, so if we go all the way back to Maharishi Patanjali thousands of years ago, right? What he observed was that we have a very slow moving positive force. So in like this Ira Pingla and those, so there is a slow moving positive force and there is a fast moving negative force. Always been there. So you always will find the fast moving higher number. But the elves are lesser in number, but they eventually win in the sense that there are these positive things that affect you positive. So the end result is that you will always find the number of negative forces and negative challenges are always increasing, but the positive force doesn't die, doesn't go away. It continues to work. So sometimes the influence is higher, sometimes the influence is lower. So, I mean, so in a way, it's hopeful that, we always have this sat, which continues to force us in a positive way, but then the negative forces continue to push you down. And that you go in any, any era, it continues to be the same challenge. So, it's not a new problem. The solution is always how do we connect with the positive? How do we stay in that positive cycle? How do we push it up? So there are some phases in history where that positive took more strength. But then it doesn't stay that way. It just continues the cycle will continue. So the only thing is the mind control, the mind focus on the mind will only be.
Okay, I have more things to say, but I just want to make sure that people online may have other questions. Otherwise.
So any other, so I think we will, no, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I'm coming to the same question, right? TTN in practice meditation. Relatively speaking, TTN has less problems, stress in the world, realistically, right? But again, he's aware of the value of this and he's been practicing, right? So, but there are lots of people, when you talked about Patanjali, there are 4 limbs that focus on that, right?
Yeah.
If you look at overall Yoga Sutra, Patanjali, 196 sutras or whatever.
Yeah.
Only 3 sutras talk about asana poses.
Right.
So today, when I teach yoga, and I have the same thing, I also bring in this mindfulness meditation initially when a lot of people were not participating, right? So they're all looking to this instant gratification of this exercise, the physical part of it. But they're not able to understand the mind plays a bigger role in overall, even physical health point of view as well, right?
Yeah.
They're only focusing more on the physical wellness by going, of course, exercises and going to gym or asanas, but not thinking about the four limbs that talk
Yep,
about
yep.
this, right? Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi, right? So in a way, not to any disrespect to any of you who've been again teaching all this, I think to some extent that maybe we are failing to communicate that to the common man, the way they can understand the value of it, right? And we understand they might be not able to practice meditation, we have to improve upon that. But sometimes I feel they're not even getting the value of understanding the value of this. That's why they're not prioritizing it. Right? One way, there's more work to be done, I think, in terms of taking that value proposition messaging part of you coming from the business world, it's about marketing, right?
Yeah.
The marketing part of it are educating the society in a way, because if you look at overall, if the society, family, that system breaks up, the world will have a bigger problem, right?
Yeah.
So bringing in these core foundational values through meditation, mindfulness, then reducing the stress in the world, bringing the value system more and more would be more value to the society, right? Where the gurus and been practicing this would have a great understanding about that, taking it to the world will be a great opportunity. I mean, helping the world to get better, be a better place, right?
So do more to kind of change the narrative or improve the narrative of what the real value is.
Yeah, narrative in a way that a common man
Can understand.
I think today Titian understands that he's
Yeah.
been practicing, he's been knowing all that stuff, right? He's intellectually much higher
Yeah.
than mine, right? So whereas a common man,
And there could be also some misunderstandings or
Yeah.
misinformation about, we talk about the benefits, but there is, people don't actually think that those are real benefits.
not only that, some extent I feel, though it's not real, so a lot of other people think it is connected to Hinduism.
Right. Yeah.
When it comes to meditation, it has nothing to do with any religion,
Yeah.
right? It's not right. But again, a lot of people have that notion of it is connected to Hinduism or something like that. So I think that should go away first of all.
Right.
If you go and talk, my wife is a physician. I mean, when they talk about meditation, she knows the value of meditation,
Yeah.
right? Every day morning, at least 5 minutes, she practices that. Right? So,
But I thought like one of the problems was that originally, see, when I look at reducing stress,
right,
one of the techniques in reducing stress and anxiety and worry,
right,
my grandfather talks about 7 or 8 tips and techniques of how to go get more peaceful rather than more worry, anxiety, and stressful. So in that, one of them is faith,
yeah,
right? Because if you feel that you have, somebody behind you, you feel safer. And when you feel safer, you are less worried, right? But what happened was, I think that was taken to such a next level that it got tied so closely. So everyone has to have their own faith,
yeah,
right? But you can still have meditation, which is, cuts across.
right.
So yeah, it's a deeper discussion.
Yeah, no, the reason being that again and again is that bringing in that faith and trust first. Once they get that, then they start getting into it. But
Yeah.
some extent, it is an activity from their point of view, right? They're not fully getting the faith, trust part of it. I think that part is not communicated well enough. They're communicating the value of it, but how do you get the trust and faith part of it taken care early on? You look at a lot of gurujis, right? A lot of followers There's not, I mean, not to belittle anybody, some fake Gurujis.
Right. And that becomes
billions of followers for that.
right.
Reason is the faith and trust. Somehow
Yeah,
they
yeah.
achieve that, right?
Yeah.
But whereas the real valuable here, reducing the problems, solving the problems we have here, but people are not able to bring in that, get into that trust mode to adopt this, right?
I
think that's where the
get your point.
marketing,
Yeah.
our messaging part of it has to go.
Right.
But more and more I see, yes, the same thing we talked about, people were happy, happier before than we are today, obviously.
Yeah.
And how kids are going to be more unhappy.
Yeah.
As more and more comforts are coming to them, but again, they'll become more and more unhappy. They're all getting into this achievement mode or materialistic world and disconnected world. So I think the meditation is definitely a great way to solve those problems. I think we need more and more educating the right folks and bringing the message into the common man level is an opportunity for all of us. I think is where I've been thinking about. Yeah.
Totally. We should talk more about that.
Yeah.
So
any more things to talk about, I think.
All right. So thank you so much, Luz, Arvindji. Anything before we wrap up? Rich.
Just as same as always, happy Saturday, everyone. And it was wonderful to meditate with you, as it always is. And I feel very fortunate to be able to hear the wisdom that's coming from everyone. A lot of things resonated, but I'll leave it for next time. Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you, Liz.
Namaskar, I enjoyed it so much. It was blissful. Thank you so much. Great to join you. Yeah,
I was thinking we'll talk a little more about some of the mental resilience work that you're doing. And I think TTN here, he is also, he was talking about a few concepts that maybe I should get you online sometime and you two, let's talk through those, because to create it's why we should do this. And it's not just purely benefits, it's also in the whole cloud of information, there are things that we have very selective hearing, right? So we need to put this in the right context. Yeah.
Absolutely. And just one thought came to my mind when you mentioned faith. It's like trying to ascend or climb or reach a higher level in spirituality, just like Mount Everest. Somebody's new and then they're going to go in a group to climb Mount Everest. You need a tour guide that you can trust, literally trust with your life. Have 100% faith. I think that's the level you need to get to, but getting there is not easy, but it's a process. So we're just fortunate to be in the process.
True. And I think actually Rich and I go back to the 90s too, and I have been discussing with him also to figure out ways in which to at least increase the outreach a little bit. I really just, there is a need, we know, so just to reach out to people who can be helped. I mean, why not, right?
Truly selfless service. Yeah. Thank you.
On that note, happy Saturday. Love, light, and peace be with you. So we'll see you all here soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Really appreciate it again. Your comments, it's really good session.
Yeah, the folks had to go to. You didn't join them.
No.
Okay. Signing